Chapter 1. La Calavera. Juanita reacted first. Being 14 and only second oldest, she didn't usually take charge. But when she felt the corpse floating beside her, she started pulling Pita out of the water as if she were a soaping Raggedy Ann doll. Holy shiitake mushrooms, the twins Velia and Delia shouted in unison, frozen in place by the side of the body, bobbing up and down, side to side, only a few feet away from us. I shrieked the way my ma would have if she'd been there with us. Get out! Get out! Get out! Grasping only the sleeve of Velia's shirt, I yanked her toward me with all my might. Odilia, she complained, let go of me. Get out of the water, now. Okay, fine. But I thought you were yelling at him. She defended herself. I pushed her and Delia ahead of me. Why would I be yelling at him? He's dead. We stood, all five of us, drenched with fear, on the bank of the river, staring wildly at the first cadaver we'd ever seen in our lives. It was spooky, like seeing a ghost floating face down in the water. His dark hair was long for a man. His thick tresses floated loosely around his head, like the black tentacles of a sea monster. We should call someone, Pita shivered, pushing her wet hair out of her face and scooting over to stand beside me, as if she were afraid the man was going to suddenly get up and come after her. The authorities, I said, my mind still reeling from the shock. The only thing I could think of was how Mama was going to give me one historical paliza when she found out. And she'd find out if we called the authorities. But I had it coming to me. After all, I got my sisters into this by bringing them here. The waters of the Rio Grande were dangerous, and Mama wouldn't care that our swimming hole seemed safe to me. How many times had we heard of drowning victims turning up on its banks? The twins Velia and Delia chimed in. The cops, for sure. No, we should call the border patrol. I bet they know what to do, Pita said, sounding older than her 10 years. Guys, Juanita whispered, her face suddenly pale. Do you realize what this means? What? Velia asked, still staring at the body floating in the river. I didn't respond. Juanita's brain always worked differently from my own, so I couldn't begin to guess what she was about to suggest. Juanita's face broke into a grin. We're going to be on TV. She sobered a little when she glanced down at the body again. Mama is not going to like this. You know how she feels about talking to strangers, Velia reminded Juanita. She was right. Mama was more than paranoid about giving out personal information. In her mind, everyone was a potential predator, and we were under strict orders never to speak to anyone about anything if she wasn't around to protect us. We weren't allowed to use the internet anywhere other than school, where we were semi-protected. No emails, no instant messages. Not only couldn't we afford a computer at home, but Mama worried that we didn't understand how to distinguish our real life friends from dirty old men. Besides, we're in no condition to put in front of we were no besides we were in no condition to be put in front of a camera. Look at us, we look like bums. I looked at each of my sisters in turn. We were wearing cut-off shorts and ripped tank tops. Pita tugged at her wet shirt, squeezing out the water and pressing it down over her round belly to smooth it out, while Velia and Delia tried in vain to straighten out each other's clothes. And to say nothing of our hair, which was not only wet but thick and clumpy with dirt residue from the river water. Pita had leaf particles clinging to her bangs. I reached over and picked the bigger pieces of debris out of them as I mulled over our predicament. Well, it's not like we have a choice. This is big. Juanita tucked her shirt into her shorts as if that was going to make a difference. The twins nodded at each other. This is more than big. This is huge, they said in unison. They had a habit of finishing each other's sentences. They were even closer to each other than all five of us were as a group. It was a game they played, presenting themselves as a twin front, fooling people who didn't know them all that well by making them think they were really exactly alike. I tried to think of a way out of it as I chastised myself for bringing the girls to swim in the river all summer long. Calling the authorities brought with it consequences, but we couldn't just leave the dead man where he was in the water. He'd pollute our swimming hole, not to mention that he should be put to rest somewhere. Ginormous, Juanita whispered beside me. Delia put her ratty tennis shoes off her feet and beat them against each other, trying to loosen that clumps of dirt from her soles. You think they'll get here that quickly? Like right away? Can't we go home and change before we call them? I don't know about you, but I want to look my best for my first television appearance. No, we can't, I said, looking at the twins. They were the pretty ones, with their long, honey brown hair, hazel eyes, and perfect smiles. They had nothing to worry about. They didn't look as pretty right now, after a day swimming in the river, but it didn't matter. The camera would love them, no matter what they were wearing or how disheveled their hair had become. Not me. Like Juanita, I was big boned, darkly bronzed from being out in the sun every day, and as homely as a ginger snap. Juanita undid her droopy ponytail and tried to comb her wet hair with her fingers. This isn't a movie set, and you're not starlets yet, she reminded the twins who had aspirations of someday making it to Hollywood. In Hollywood, this is about him, not us. That's right. This is real life, and that's a real dead man in there. I pointed to the river. What if bringing an investigation here meant no more swimming? Whoever we call is going to want to interrogate us. The cops, the border patrol, everyone's going to want to know how and when and where we found him. And that's when the news people get involved. Velia looked at her twin sister for validation, not grasping the full meaning of what I was getting at. But we're filthy. My shorts are ripped, see? We can't be seen on TV looking like this. What will people think? Delia put her hand on her twin's shoulder. They'll think we're poor, and that our father has abandoned us, she stated sarcastically. The painful truth set off my sister. Suddenly, everyone was talking at once. Pita's voice cut through us all, saying aloud that one thing that worried us more than Mama finding out about this. Do you think Papa will see us on television? Pita asked, biting the inside of her lip. I hope we don't embarrass him. I couldn't help but wonder, myself, what Papa would do if he saw us. Would he feel sorry for us? Would it make him come back? It'll be fine, Juanita assured her. Here, let me fix your hair. As Juanita used her fingers to scrape back Pita's hair and resecure its braids, I thought about where her father might be. We don't know if he even watches the news, I reminded them. The truth is, we don't know much about him nowadays. Not where he's living, where his band is performing, or why he hasn't called or come home in almost a year. Well, if he does watch the news, he should be embarrassed, Juanita retorted through the ponytail holder clenched between her teeth. Leaving without saying goodbye? I don't know why I'm even surprised. She spat out the rubber band and bound up the bottom of Pita's braid. Did you know that 70% of men aren't as attached to their female children as they are to their sons? It's true. I read that somewhere. Delia let out an exaggerated sigh and rolled her eyes. Can't you ever talk like a real person? I'm tired of listening to you quote stupid stuff. If you two taradas are done arguing, we need to go home and change before going up to customs, Velia said, taking the focus away from Papa and back to the situation at hand. The body was still floating gently in the same place. The way the current worked here, once something floated into an eddy, it had to be pushed out again. Juanita smacked Velia in the back of the head, then pushed her away. If you call me tarada ever again, I'm going to show you just how ignorant I am, by kicking your behind all the way across the river. Knock it off, I said, stepping between them. If we kept bickering, we'd never make a decision about the dead man and what it meant for the future of our swimming hole. After a quick glance at Juanita, I turned my attention to Velia and Delia. What's wrong with you all? A man is dead in the river, and all you can do is fight? We should be pulling him out and going to get help. Delia didn't look at Juanita. Instead, she turned to look at the drowned man. His blue shirt clung to his back in a crumpled mess. It was still semi tucked into his belted jeans. He was wearing brown cowboy boots that were probably made from rattlesnake skin, like the ones Papa had on his feet the morning he walked out of our lives. We could push him out again and move him downstream, then cut him loose in the water down there, she pointed downriver. Or we could just lug him back out to the deep end, have the river carry him further away, then call someone, Delia said. I think pushing him out there is a good idea, I said. So who's going to help me here? Who's going up to customs to report this? Remember the rule of the five little sisters: cinco hermanitas together forever, no matter what. No one's allowed to go off on their own, so we'll travel in packs. Delia, Velia, what are you two doing, and who are you talking with? Who are you taking with you? Now hold on, Juanita interrupted. The twins waited in the water a few feet from the dead man, caught between their older sister's arguments. We're not calling anyone. We can't turn him into the migra. They'll throw him in a hole somewhere and forget all about him. A concerned look in Juanita's eyes told me she truly believed the rumors. Like Juanita, I heard the horrible rumores from the comadres in our neighborhood too. They whispered about unclaimed bodies in sacks and shallow, unmarked graves. I was sure the rumors were grossly exaggerated, but we had no way to know one way or the other. They throw them in a hole? Pita stood behind us, away from the riverbank, as if afraid of getting too close to the corpse. Why? She wailed. Her plump face twisted the anguish and her eyes brimmed with tears. At the sight of our baby sister in distress, I put an arm around Pita's shoulders, hugging her to my side. They don't treat them like animals. They bury them, I corrected, trying not to scare her any more than she already was. Maybe we should just let them do that, Velia said, inching back towards the shore. I'd rather not touch a dead body if I don't have to. She didn't come out of the water, though. I tried to signal to Juanita with widened eyes that it was enough, but she either didn't get the hint or decided to ignore it. Hello, she burst out, arms flailing. Those customs agents are ruthless. To them, illegals are no better than stray dogs. They'd shoot them before they'd help them. You're so full of it, I said, shaking my head. Customs agents are government workers. They have to take care of the bodies they find. Shows how much you know, Juanita mumbled, looking at the dead man floating in front of her. And what makes you such an expert? I demanded, still hugging Pita. I pulled her closer, drawing her away from the side of the dead man. One of those stupid books you read all night. No, wait. You were just born knowing it all. Sorry, I forgot. Pita scrunched up her face on the verge of sobbing aloud. I'm scared. Shut up. We don't have time for crybabies, Juanita scowled at Pita. The dead man continued to float in front of us like a giant waterlogged voodoo doll. A bad omen, to be sure. Juanita paced along the bank, agitated. I let go of Pita to sit down on a rock, the weight of the decision we needed to make unsettling my stomach with a queasy feeling that no matter what we decided, our lives would change. I'm telling Mama, Pita wailed, but when she started toward the bikes, Juanita pulled her arm and forced her to face us. No, you're not, you little snitch, she said. We're not telling anyone anything. We're going to do the right thing. I didn't like where this was heading. Knowing Juanita and her quixotic ways, this could turn into one of her many harebrained schemes. Next she'd be starting some kind of crusade to prevent the drowning of illegal aliens in the waters of the Rio Grande. And what's that? What is the right thing, Juanita? I asked, exasperated. Arguing with her always had a draining effect on me. Help me pull him out, Juanita said as she waded into the river. Water quickens the rate of decay. We need to hurry. I'm not touching that, Pita announced, stopping behind me. Him? You're not touching him? Juanita hissed at Pita, who pressed her face against my back. He's a human being, even if he's dead. Now help me pull him out. Pita, you go sit over there if you can't handle it. She directed our little sister to a china berry tree with giant overhanging branches a few yards away. Obediently, Pita went to sit under the designated tree. Delia and Velia looked at each other, shrugged, and followed Juanita deeper into the river where the body was still floating in the gentle water. We should call the authorities, Juanita, I said, trying to control the situation like Mama would have wanted. I don't think we should pull him in. No telling how long he's been dead. As usual, Juanita ignored me. Although she was only a year older than the twins, who were 13 and full of cuss words and spite, Juanita was much taller and more muscular. Next to them, she looked like an Amazonian, like the female warriors in Greek mythology. She could have pulled in the man's body without help from any of us. I stood my ground. Delia and Velia stood waist deep in the river and stared at me with the exact same expression on their faces. An expression that said I should do something. What? I asked them. I'm not helping her. She's crazy. Always has been. I'm not crazy. I'm compassionate. I'm more than compassionate. I'm considerate, Juanita said, using the word correctly. Unlike the twins, who were having fun exploring the criminal side of language, Juanita had recently discovered the pocket-sized dictionary and big words flew out of her mouth every day. Big words flew out of her mouth every day. Most of the time, I complimented her on her vocabulary, but at that moment, her consideration was making me sick to my stomach. He's heavy, Juanita huffed as she pulled the dead man towards her by his right arm. Delia and Velia screamed when the body made contact with their midriffs. They sprang out of the water like sleek mojaras, two slim, delicate fish flying out of the river. So Juanita ended up bringing in the dead man by herself. I only helped her when she was having trouble dragging him over to sit him up against the trunk of a mesquite tree. Juanita moved his arms up and down and side to side. He hasn't been dead very long, she hypothesized. See, there's no rigor mortis, I corrected. You still have some work to do on those dictionary skills. Whatever, she said, sounding embarrassed. I think he just drowned, like a few hours ago. He doesn't smell and he's not swollen, but I could tell he was definitely dead to the point where I was sure pumping on his chest wouldn't have done him any good. Drowned? What do you know about drowning? I asked her. While I wasn't sure she knew what she was talking about, I was relieved to hear the news. Even if she wouldn't listen to me, at least Juanita wasn't exposing the other girls to some super decayed dead man's germs. Hello, I watch Crime Dogs. It's like my favorite show. The sight of her turning the body over and pressing and prodding at the head and torso with her bare hands turned my stomach. Juanita had nerves of steel. I had to give her credit for that. Besides, it's obvious he drowned. There are no other signs of trauma, no bullets, nothing. See? She flipped the body on its back again. We should really go up to customs and get some help, I began. Juanita's brown eyes were warm and dark, with the genuine concern she was proud of. I wonder where he came from. If he has a family, do they know where he went? Did he tell them? because I knew exactly where this was coming from. I put my arms around her shoulder and pulled her close. He must have, I assured her. Papa didn't, Delia whispered to Velia as they stared at the drowned man. His brown hair was slicked back from his face now, as if he had just gone for a swim, and his face was expressionless, serene, as if he were now sleeping in the hot sun to dry off. Except, of course, he was still fully clothed. Juanita ignored the twins and crouched back down to inspecting the body. He's soaked. Duh, Velia said, rolling her eyes toward Delia. We should take off his clothes, Juanita suggested. Let him dry out before he starts to grow fungus or something. Gross, I'm not doing that, Velia and Delia exclaimed in unison. I pushed Juanita gently away from the corpse. We should leave him just the way we found him. We should have left him in the water, Babas, Delia said, thumping Juanita on the shoulder with the back of her hand. Watch your mouth, I warned. I was tired of the twins calling everyone stupid, Delia mumbled an apology under her breath. I ignored my command to leave the drowned man alone. Ignoring my command to leave the drowned man alone, Juanita tugged the dead man's left boot and yanked it off his foot, almost falling back in the process. To everyone's surprise, a tightly wound plastic bag fell halfway out of his sock. Juanita pulled it all the way out and looked at us before she opened it. Money, she whispered as she pulled out a huge wad of rolled up American bills and laid it down beside the drowned man. Velia snatched it up and started sorting it, divvying it up between herself and Delia. Look at this, hundreds, fifties, twenties, Velia announced. She and her twin unrolled the bills, laying them in neat stacks over a flat rock a few feet away. Their announcement piqued Rita's interest. Like a curious kitten, she crawled out from under the chinaberry tree and came over to join us. She picked up $100 bill and turned the foreign object over in her hands. He was rich. There's a wallet with an address, Juanita whispered, pulling the man's Mexican driver's license out of the wallet and staring at it. His name is Gabriel Perdido. He's from El San Francisco across the border. I stood up and stepped away, wiping my hands on my wet shorts. My palms suddenly felt sticky and dirty, and I couldn't breathe right. We have to turn it all in, the wallet, the money, everything, I said resolutely. We can't do that to him, Juanita said, looking at me with those big brown eyes. I felt like a jerk for not caring as much, but I had to be reasonable. We don't even know this guy, so stop acting like we owe him anything. There had to be something we could do that would be right, but also not get in trouble with Mama. If she realized we'd be swimming so close to the deep end of the river all summer, she'd never let us come back here. On the other hand, we had no other choice but to report the poor man. Mama would have been even more upset if she found out that we didn't. And knowing Pita's loose tongue, Mama was bound to find out sooner or later. We were doomed either way. He's probably got a wife and kids, and they're worried about him, Juanita insisted. And right now they're wondering what he's doing, and if he made it across all right. We don't know that, I snatched the driver's license from her. Look, his driver's license expired 6 years ago. He probably doesn't even live there anymore. Truth is, we don't know who he is or what he does, or even if he has family. He has a family, Juanita yelled. She threw his worn out wallet at me. Pita picked it up and looked at the picture flap inside, which started her tears again. Belia and Delia took it away from her and stared at it too, but they didn't say anything. He has a family and a home and a life, Juanita said, as she took the wallet back from the twins and passed it to me. Behind the plastic on the right side of the beat up wallet was a picture of a man with his family. We can't just leave him here. We've got to find a way to take him back to his family. El, El Sacrificio? I asked, the name getting caught in the back of my throat. He's, hey, isn't that close to, Velia started, where Papa is from? Delia finished Velia's thought, looking at her twin first and then turning to me with an expectant look. We can't go to El Sacrificio, I said. The idea of possibly encountering Papa terrified me. What if he didn't want to see us? What if he walked away from us again? Why not? Velia asked. Abuelita Remedios still lives near El Sacrificio, in Hacienda Dorada. Juanita said, a plan to visit Papa's mother, formerly vividly within the shine of her dark brown eyes. We can't go to El Sacrificio, I repeated firmly. Velia and Delia clearly questioned my sanity. From the looks on their faces, why not? I'd like to see Abuelita Remedios again, Pita whimpered, taking my hand in a silent plea. I felt sorry for her. She had only met our grandmother once before, when she was around 3. We can't, I insisted. I shook my head and let go of Pita's hand. I stepped away and turned my back to them. I stared off into the woods, down the worn path that led back into town, wishing we'd stayed home today. Look, it's been years since we last went to Hacienda Dorada. I like to see Abuelita again too, Juanita said, plodding down between the rock with the money and the dead man. Experts agree children need to be close to their grandparents. It makes them feel secure. And when they grow up feeling loved, they make better parents themselves. That's a bunch of horseradish. I'm never become a parent, Delia interjected. I held up my hand in a vain attempt to stop this runaway train of thought. We can't go because I began, then dropping the wallet on Juanita's lap, I closed my eyes and fought past the raw, agonizing emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. It was painful to know that our paternal grandmother lived less than a day's drive away, and we had not seen her more than twice in our lifetimes. If only Papa had been more willing to do his job and make us a family, maybe a sacrificio would be more than just an exotic name printed on a dead man's driver's license. Because why? Juanita demanded doggedly. Give me one good reason. Because it's all the way in friggin' Mexico. That's why, I growled. Juanita waved the wallet up at me again. Don't you see, there's a reason we found him, instead of the border patrol. He came looking for us because he knew we could help him. It's not a coincidence that he's from the same place as Papa. What are you talking about? I asked. You're not making any sense. Juanita continued passionately. Don't you get it? We were meant to find him so we could go see our abuelita in Mexico again. But it was fate that brought him to us. Do you even know what you're considering? I asked. That man was dead. There had to be a law against what she was proposing. I know it's going to be hard, Juanita concluded, but if this man's family is ever going to see him again, we're going to have to be the ones to take him back. And maybe while we're in the sacrificio, we can find out if Abuelita Remedios knows what's happened to Papa. I whispered, more to myself than to them. My comment was met with silence. I hadn't meant to make the connection, but it was too late. The thought was out there. Their eyes said it all. The same question had been on everybody's mind, not just mine. I was about to take it back when something caught my eye. On the other side of the Rio Grande, on the hill, something moved. A woman. She stood still, watching us from afar. I tried to focus in on her face, but the sun's reflection bounced off the surface of the water, and her form wavered in the afternoon light. One minute her long white dress was billowing against her legs, and the next she was gone. Disappeared, like a ghostly apparition. She vanished into the surreal light of the fading sunset. What is it? Juanita asked, looking across the river. I thought of La Llorona, the legendary weeping woman said to have drowned her own children. Mamá says she roams the rivers of this world in search of them. Goosebumps rose on my skin, and my body shook slightly. Nothing, I said, rubbing my arms briskly and turning my attention back to the girls. Let's get out of here. It's getting dark.